Vamos a pasarla bien. Cafecito Cultural. Siente la buena vibra. Cafecito Cultural.
Welcome, everyone, to our Cafecito Cultural. I'm thrilled to have you all here for our vibrant conversation about culture and diversity between this amazing professional community. My name is Rosabel, and I am the proud founder of this incredible group of dedicated professionals. Together, we are passionate about infusing our classes with culture and celebrating the richness of diversity. Let's dive into this exciting discussion. Today, in our Cafecito Cultural, we are pleased to have Dr. Lillie Padilla from Sam Houston State University, Texas. Welcome, Dr. Padilla. How are you doing today?
I'm doing so well. Thank you so much, Rosa, for inviting me for this interview. Thank you.
Thank you for accepting our invitation. And let's start it because this is an amazing interview that we have today. I'm going to say a little bit about you, Dr. Padilla. If you would like to add a little bit more, you're welcome to do this, okay?
Okay.
So, Dr. Lillie Padilla is an assistant professor of Spanish at Sam Houston State University in Huntsville, Texas. She holds a PhD and MA in Spanish linguistics from Arizona State University. Her research explores Afro-Latino representation, discourse analysis, and ideologies found in educational curricula, particularly in the Spanish-speaking world. Her research advocates for the inclusion of marginalized voices within language education, and she is the co-author of the edited volume Representation, Inclusion, and Social Justice in World Language Teaching. Thank you so much. This is taking me directly to my first question for you. And I would like to know what initially inspired you to focus your research on Afro-Latino, Afro-descendants representation in Spanish language textbooks and curricula.
Thank you so much, Rosa. Thank you once again. So what got me interested in researching Afro-Latino and Afro-descendant representation in Spanish textbooks and classes, it was really a mix of personal experiences as a Spanish student and things that I noticed when I was teaching as a Spanish professor. So as an African woman, I am specifically from Ghana in West Africa. And I just couldn't help but notice how little representation there was of African descended people in the materials that we were using in our Spanish classes. How little African roots in Latin America were mentioned in these materials. And when they were included, it was often in a very limited or stereotypical way. For example, you never see Afro-Latino people appearing as professionals in Spanish textbooks or appearing in any significant roles. And at first, as a Spanish student, I thought, well, maybe it's just the particular books that we are using. But later on, I noticed that no, this is a common narrative throughout Spanish textbooks. Afro-descendants are made to be invisible, or when they are mentioned, it was always in very limited or stereotypical ways. And that just didn't sit right with me, especially knowing how large and important Afro-Latinx communities are in the Spanish-speaking world. And so I kept thinking, if we are teaching our students about Spanish and about Latin American culture, how can we leave out this important part of the story? I started to dig deeper and I wanted to know, why is this happening? What kind of message is this sending out to our students, especially to Black and to Afro-descended students? And so my research specifically looks at what stories textbooks are telling, especially what they are not saying. And I talk to students, I talk to educators to try and understand how these materials shape what our students are learning and what they believe. And most importantly, how we can make changes, how we can give students a better learning experience, and especially an accurate learning experience in the Spanish language classroom.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. And it's very curious. You from Ghana,
Yes, from Ghana.
And you came interested in learning Spanish, and
Yes.
then realized like, okay, if I'm studying Spanish, but I'm trying to look for people that look like me, and I
Yes.
don't find that in
Nothing.
nothing in here, no books
Nothing.
like that. Hello, what's going
Yes. What?
on? I can
Exactly.
only imagine that. And
Exactly.
and and it's true because as me as a student growing up, I thought it was normal just to always have
Yeah.
other ethnical groups instead of my own, something that
Yes.
I can find myself in there and something
Yes.
that identifies me. And I'm
Yes.
glad that you notice and also do your
Yes.
research
Yes.
and working on it.
And
What
that's
are the
how I felt
more
as a student too, always trying to look for that connection to African roots in the textbooks. And I just couldn't connect with these books. And that's how it
exactly?
all started. Yes.
Imagine our students
Yes.
nowadays
Yes.
trying to find themselves, trying to get to know themselves, and all they see is just other colors, right, that are not similar to theirs. So
Yes.
let me ask you something. So, what are the most important things that you have discovered about Afro-Latino communities showing in Spanish textbooks, and then other learning materials since you started this research?
So since I started this research, one of the biggest things that I have discovered is how invisible Afro-Latino communities are in many of these Spanish textbooks and learning materials. And as I said, when they are included, it's always in very surface level ways. Like, for example, a quick mention during Black History Month, or showing Afro-Latino people just in music or in dance without even going deeper into their history, their culture, or their daily life. Or sometimes you just see, even if you see someone who is Afro-descended, it's always a light-skinned Afro-descended person, never a dark-skinned person. That's something that I have noticed. Another thing I've realized is that this lack of representation, it has an effect on our students because it affects how they think about Spanish, the Spanish speaking world. From the interviews that I have conducted, I have seen that students assume that all Latin American people are light skinned, or that Black Latin American people, they are somehow different, or they are rare, or they don't exist, which is not true. And that is because of this lack of representation. It reinforces stereotypes. It creates a very limited view of what Latin America is and what a Spanish speaking world is. Another thing that I have noticed is that it also affects educators because there are some educators who really want to include diverse voices and stories in their classrooms, but they often feel like they don't have the resources or they don't have the institutional support, especially now. And so, an important part of my research is to help to fill this gap by offering tools, by offering materials and research that can make this work a little bit easier and to create a little bit more accurate picture of what the Spanish speaking world is. And I think the most important part of all this research is just showing at the core that representation really does matter. And it's not just for the sake of visibility, but for the sake of helping students to think critically. Because
Yeah.
critical thinking is a very important part of the language classroom. It helps students to go above the content. It helps them to see themselves in the Spanish language classroom and to better understand the world that is around them. So those are, I think, the most important things that I have seen as a result of this research.
But when you was talking, it came to my head um, when you said we're talking about the lack of representation of
Yes,
Afro-Latinos in textbooks for
yes,
teachings, for teachers and for students, right?
yes,
And I wonder if this is something they have to do with like I heard other book writers that when they are trying to write about that, it's not it's kind of like the publishers or the editorial they kind of like, no, this is a material that we are not really looking for. It's like a little like no, I would not say not acceptable, but it's like
Yes.
they don't see why we should change something that is already done in this way or so. Have you seen that before
Because
or experienced that?
as a result of this research, we actually even had interviews with some publishers. And just as you said, there is this pushback. It's a fight against the status quo because this is how it's always been done. No one they feel sometimes it feels like no one has complained enough, But that is why we need to make changes. That is why we need to continue to do this research and bring visibility because if we don't make changes, if we don't talk about it, it's as if we are accepting this invisibility, which is not the case because we cannot accept to be invisible because is a lack of voice continues to create this marginalization. And so there is a need to make changes. And these changes are what we are fighting for with research, with creating materials, because we need to continue to create this visibility in our classrooms. And by doing it in the classroom, in the Spanish classroom, we are training the future generation of Spanish teachers because these students in our classrooms, they are the ones who are going to teach Spanish in the future. So it's important that it's done in the Spanish classroom. They get to understand the importance of representation so that they can carry it on and then we make these changes that are needed. If the textbooks are not
Correct.
doing it, we can create the materials ourselves.
Yeah, and taking advantage that the students are always looking for more information and they like
Exactly.
more textbooks or materials that we present with real world scenarios.
Yes.
More actualization of the material would be something that is very necessary,
Yes.
especially when you were talking about the critical thinking
Yes.
for students, right? Because foster this deeper understanding of culture and because first of all, the Spanish is not just the language; it's in a
Yes.
getaway of to diverse cultures. So
Yes.
this critical thinking helps students to engage with cultural texts,
Yes.
media, or discussions. I'm sorry, in the classroom that are more profoundly right. And then by evaluating this cultural context and their implication, then the student will develop more an appreciation for the nuances of the Spanish speaking world, not
Exactly.
just looking at the focus of the not having the Afro Latinos, but when having that, it
Exactly.
enhances more knowledge, it enhances more engagement, let's say, per se,
Exactly.
because then it's something out of the routine
Yes.
that they will
Yes.
see it. And at the
Yes.
end, you are building empathy, you're building more
Yes.
engaging discussions because that's what it promotes when you have something different, right?
Yes.
When you have something that they can see, that the student sitting next to them is an
Yeah.
Afro descendant, hey,
Yes.
and then it
Yes.
give a space to the
Mhm.
Afro descendant students because
Yes.
then they reflect themselves in there.
Exactly.
Why
Exactly.
nobody thinking about to
Well,
start writing?
exactly.
Why ain't even I'm thinking?
And there
Why
are
I
open
need to
access,
start
open
doing it?
educational resources as well, which can be used. So there
Mm-hmm.
are, there are open educational resources, there are YouTube materials, there are Facebook groups. For example,
Yeah.
like the Afro Latino Educational Resource Group on Facebook. There are several resources that educators can take advantage of to use in their classrooms to create this representation. Yes.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking, there is usually some pushback when it comes to incorporating Afro Latino culture into the
Mhm.
into the classroom because some teachers say that they don't feel comfortable talking or teaching the topics that involve race and identity. How do
Yeah.
how do you see this?
Yes, there is definitely some pushback. And I get it because a lot of teachers say that I don't feel comfortable talking about race or identity because they're afraid of saying the wrong thing or they feel that I don't know enough, especially now. Some worry that it's too political or it's not really part of the language class. But the truth is that race and identity, they are already part of the cultures that we teach. They are
Yeah.
just often left out of the conversation. It's already part of the language. You cannot teach a language in isolation without talking about these things. So what I try to share out with educators is that you don't have to be an expert on Afro-Latino culture to start including it. It's okay to let your students know that you are learning alongside your students. You don't have to belong to the culture. What really matters is creating a space where different voices and experiences are acknowledged and respected. So educators can start small, maybe highlighting Afro-Latino authors, using their music or arts, using Afro-Latino creators and writers, or just pointing out the diversity that exists within Spanish-speaking countries. I think that's important to remember that avoiding these topics does not make them just go away. In fact, just avoiding it, you are actually sending messages to students that certain histories and certain identities, they are not important enough to talk about in the classroom. So even if it feels uncomfortable at first, I think that it's worth pushing through. Students really appreciate it, especially Black and Afro-Latino students. They really appreciate it when they see themselves reflected in the classroom, when they see themselves in the stories, in the histories, in the poems and the writings. And other students as well, they appreciate it when they are given the chance to learn about others as well. And so at the end of the day, it's not really about being perfect. It's just about being open, about being intentional, and about being willing to grow alongside your students.
Because we don't have to wait for a specific month of the year
Exactly.
to integrate this into our classes. It should be something normal,
Yes.
something that is always there.
Exactly.
And not only because I'm an Afro-Latina, just teaching about that. You have to variate your material. You have to make sure that you include also other ethnical groups into anything that you teach in, either be language, social studies, history, anything. But people sometimes, some educators, sometimes they just go by their old routine and don't upgrade themselves to have this cultural relevance in their classes. So including this Afro-Latino community in textbooks will help reflect the diversity of all the Spanish-speaking world. And for us as a language teachers, when students see themselves or their cultural backgrounds represented, then they feel more connected to the material, and then this relevance fosters a greater interest in learning and participation, not just for the Afro-Latino students, but also for any other students, right? And then this, I would say, goes to a broadening perspective where Afro-Latinos have rich histories and contributions that are often overlooked in traditional curricula. And that's what I had been observed when I was studying about today's conversation, preparing myself into this. I'm thinking that by including their stories, students gain a more comprehensive understanding of the Latin American and Caribbean culture, history, and you name it. And then the struggles against racism and discrimination. This broader perspective can encourage the critical thinking that we mentioned, right? And discussions about identity, cultural, and social justice. Why not? So if we want to teach a material that is today's days, which is what they hearing everywhere in newspapers, TikTok, Instagram, all the platforms, it will promote more inclusivity in the classes. And it's always, what I have experienced is when I started to bring real world materials and scenarios in the classes and promoting this inclusivity for all, not because I find it in textbooks, but because I have to create my own material since they are not out there, right? Since we have not started yet to start writing and do this possible. The students will feel more valued, more acknowledged. The students see the diverse figures in literature and history, not January, no February, all year round.
The whole year, exactly.
And this can diminish the feelings of alienation and inspires also the confidence in their own identity and experiences.
Exactly.
You have students that come back and say, wow, I didn't know about this because I was learning this way, but now I see. And
Mhm.
you want to hear that now I see, now I know. And
It's so fulfilling as an educator to see you really then made an impact in the lives of these students, you know.
yeah, it connects them with contemporary issues. You know, many Afro-Latinos figures are actively engaged in contemporary societal issues. And we can say some such as like activism, the arts, the political issues, everything. And so when we integrate this narrative, it allows students to connect their language learning with current events and then making them connect relatable and timely.
Yeah.
So we are really preparing the students to
Yeah.
become global citizens
Yeah.
when we use this type of
Yeah.
materials like that. I so much appreciate that you have done this research and so much feel blessed to get to know you
Oh,
and
likewise.
we can share this so much important information that because this approach they encourage them to think critically and about the relevance of the Spanish in today's world. It's not that because we are Spanish, we're all the same. We are all different,
Yeah. Yeah.
all different.
Yeah.
So let me answer one more question.
Yes.
What are some simple ways teachers can include more Afro-Latino voices and stories in their Spanish classes?
I love this question that you're asking because sometimes when you start to talk about including Afro-Latino voices, some educators think that, oh my God, this is going to be so much work. It means that I have to spend the whole summer recreating my whole class and my whole curriculum. But no, there are some really simple ways that you can bring visibility to Afro-Latinos without recreating the whole syllabus. So, for example, you can switch up examples in your classroom when you are teaching grammar, for example, you can use Afro-Latino names and cultural references. It's not every time that when you are teaching, you say Juan viaja a Madrid, or for example, Maria vive en Cartagena. We see those examples referencing España and Cartagena so many times in our books. You can switch them and give examples that reference Afro-Latino artists, Afro-Latino places. You can talk about Luis es un artista afro-cubano, or you can mention a place like Choco, places that will bring attention to Afro-Latino artists and places, and students will start to ask you that, oh, where is this place? Or we haven't heard this before. Just little examples that you can bring even in teaching grammar would begin to get students asking questions about who Afro-Latinos are because they are used to seeing these examples about Juan Vive in Madrid in all their textbooks that they have. For example, you can also highlight Afro-Latino musicians because students connect with music so much. And there are so much rhythms that these artists have that students will love and connect with. So for example, we have contemporary ones like Amara La Negra and so many others that students may even know, but they don't even know that these are Afro-Latino artists. They don't even know that some of these songs have roots in these Latin American countries. And so it's good to talk about the roots of some of these musics and songs and talk about where they came from. Using music is a way to bring attention to these communities because students really do bond with music. I also think that videos and short stories and interviews, I use, for example, a lot of Robert Gates short videos just excerpts because they specifically focus on Afro-Latino stories and parts. Like, for example, he has a video about the Black grandma in the closet and how several Latin American countries hide African history. Just short excerpts of those videos really, really bring attention to the Afro-Latino experience, bringing in real life stories, poems. For example, Nicolas Guillen's poems or just short, it doesn't have to be a whole class.
Yeah.
Just consciously, intentionally creating this visibility is enough. You don't have to change the whole curriculum. You can put it in the grammar examples. You can insert it in the culture, but you need to be intentional about it. And that way you can create visibility in your class without having to switch up the curriculum. Just making it intentional in every class. And this is a way that will help students to see that Afro-Latinos are part of the Spanish-speaking world. And this would take all this attention that we have towards this Eurocentric focuses that we have in our Spanish textbook, in our Spanish curricula, and bring attention to Afro-Latinos as well.
Thank you. And have you explaining, I'm listening about encourage identity and exploration.
Yes.
Because for students of for a student of African descent, seeing Afro-Latino represented can validate their experience, right?
Yes.
And then it can encourage them also to explore their own cultural identity.
Yes.
And then this connection can lead to a greater engagement and motivation to learn the language.
Yes.
And as they see the potential because of their voices and stories to be part of the broader narrative. And then when you say that enhancing the language skills, through the diverse text, the future Afro-Latino voices, this can introduce students to, I would say, various dialects and expressions and cultural reference. They are unique to different regions and background. So it's just about the mindset of the educator mindset, let's say. Maybe at this time when they are listening to us, they say, okay, now you want me to go ahead and change my whole curriculum. And I just say, no, you don't have to change your whole curriculum, but slide in something, out of 3 slides, at least one, include this variation of the different regions and backgrounds in the learning in the Spanish and in culture and Afro-Latinos. This will exposure enriches their language skills and improve their ability to understand and communicate in diverse contexts that we are. So it basically is no more work. It will enhance more participation, engage more people, enhance and make it more interesting. Your classes will be a lot more interesting. I don't know you, but I like when my students say, what we're going to have tomorrow. And then when the next day come in and say, oh, we're ready. Because you are doing something different, something unique. And they love that. They love that. I know you have published a book, and it's called Representation, Inclusion, and Social Justice in the World Language Teaching. Now, would this book be able to help these teachers that are now listening and looking at what we're talking about, listening to what we're talking about? What is this book about? Tell us a little bit about what is this book about? And and also please let us know where we can find this book.
Okay, so thank you. This is an edited volume by me and Rostivana, and this book contains and so many chapters. It is a volume that has chapters that helps educators, not just Spanish, but world languages. For example, we have Portuguese as well, and it helps educators to re-examine the traditional teaching methodologies. That helps to ensure that there's representation and inclusion and social justice in their classes. So for example, in this book, we have chapters on critical language awareness, chapters on critical race theory, ethnic studies, teacher training, non-binary language use in our classroom, social justice and cultural relevant curriculum, and how to incorporate inclusive language in world language curriculum. And it's not just theory in this book. At the end of explaining and everything, every chapter in the book has actual tips and practical strategies that educators can use in their classroom to make sure that it is actually, you actually have the tools and strategies that you can use to, you have like the tools to actually teach in the classroom and know that this is something practical that I can do in the class. And this book is available on the Routledge website and also on Amazon as well. So it's something that this book was published in 2024, so it is still new, hot off the press, and educators can can buy it and go through these numerous chapters that we have. They help you to make sure your class is truly representative. And it is, I would say that this book is it's very, very relevant now. It's a book that's now more than ever, I think that is a book that educators should purchase and see how best to make your class really representative, inclusive, and make sure that we are forging for social justice in our world language classrooms.
Perfect, perfect. And we will make sure that we share the link where teachers can go ahead and take a look of the book purchase and put it into practice. Because integrating Afro-Latino literature allows students to engage in critical analysis of themes, social representation, intersectionality, and impact of a story of current identity. So this depth analysis will sharpen their critical thinking skills and better prepares them for discussions in Spanish and beyond. So in conclusion, to close today's Cafecito, we would say that integrating Afro-Latinos in Spanish textbooks enriches the curriculum, right? Make it more inclusive, relevant, and engaging for students. So this approach not only enhances language learning, but also foster a deeper understanding of cultural diversity and social issues. So these are also essential for developing informed and empathetic global citizens. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Padilla, for enlightening us today on this important subject of representation and inclusions of Afro-Latinos in the Spanish curriculum. Thank you, everyone, for watching this video. If you enjoy it, please remember to click like and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue bringing you this engaging conversation. Thank you, Dr. Padilla. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Vamos a pasarla bien. Cafecito